What's going on, everybody? It's Lucky Fang Gaming here, and welcome back to Ark Survival Evolved, where today we're going to ask the question, would the Earth even be able to have survived a dragon or wyvern incursion? Without further ado, let's get into this. Alright, guys, now, actually, just last night I was watching How to Train Your Dragon, and it honestly got me thinking, would dragons have been able to survive alongside history, or would they have basically been either an extinction level event which would have wiped out the rest of the animals and probably even humanity, or would they have um, just simply been the most dominant animal on Earth? Um, would humanity have even been able to rise up against beings such as this? Well, that's the question. That's the thing I pondered on, and I want to talk about it today. Actually, this isn't the first time I've actually had this thought, but I decided to make it last night after watching How to Train Your Dragon. Um, so today I want to talk about it with you guys. So, of course, to start with, we should probably talk about the difference between a dragon and a wyvern. I'm just going to consistently call them dragons throughout the video, even though I know this is a wyvern. I still want to call it a dragon because dragon is easier to say than wyvern. But here we have what's actually a wyvern, just so everybody knows that, yes, I understand the mythos. Keep it to yourself. Just keep it in the comments. But this is a wyvern. This, as you can see here, it's got 2 legs and 2 wings. That makes it a wyvern. And then dragons have 4 legs and it's 2 wings. That's just kind of the difference. Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon would be a dragon, and let's say Nightmare from How to Train Your Dragon would have been actually a wyvern. Now, in some situations, I believe people say that dragons are generally larger than wyverns, but I think that's just kind of up to personal interpretation there. So I know you want to be near Trixie button, but you gotta move. So we're gonna move you. Okay, so would the world have been able to survive dragons? Now, um, it depends on at what point you're talking about. When do they pop up? Well, I think naturally, if you have an animal like this, eventually something's going to pop up, and you know, well, this has its evolution and it is growing into a beast like this, something else is going to come, and either its prey will start to evolve better ways to escape it, or something else will pop up to combat it. That's just how evolution works. Evolution is basically always an. Evolution can be summed up this way: a constant arms race. Animals are always in an arms race. Prey is always figuring out better ways to avoid predators, and predators are always figuring out better ways to grab prey. That's just how it works. It's just basically a constant arms race. So that being said, I think if wyverns had gone from, say, something like Button over here and grown into a wyvern, eventually something would have, or well, while this thing was growing into this, something else would have grown to avoid it. So I think the way we may have seen that is possibly something that has more ranged capabilities, something like, say, maybe a Velonosaur, which would maybe shoot the wyverns, or maybe neither. Maybe we've had something that would have burrowed into the ground, or maybe we would have had more cave-dwelling animals that would have gone into caves to avoid the wyverns here, or dragons, or I said I was going to call them dragons, so I'm going to keep calling them dragons. To avoid dragons. Now, of course, this thing would have been a menace to just everything. Assuming, like I said, assuming this thing just randomly popped up, assuming it came out of nowhere, everything was just evolving, hopping along, doing whatever it was doing, this thing would have been an absolute menace, with fire breath, and everything else, which I'm not sure that the animal would have used its fire breath on anything in particular, except maybe humans. Probably would have used its fire breath on humans. But in nature, I don't know that this thing would have used its fiery breath. I know there's some animals in some birds and uh, in Australia, which intentionally spreads fire around to force out small animals that it can then go and catch. But I feel like wyvern, uh, being this big, probably wouldn't use that for any particular reason. The only thing I can see it using it for would be defensive purposes. Maybe to guard a nest. But even then, I feel like its nest would have been like up there, like you see up on the top of that cliff, maybe on the top of those mountains up there, or it would have found like a deep cavern to dig in, and kind of like the Scar here on Ark, it would have laid its eggs in that. I don't think it would have put its eggs in any such a vulnerable position. Birds don't put their eggs in vulnerable positions. I don't think a dragon would have put its eggs in a vulnerable position like that. Um, so. Would animals have been able to continue to survive? Well, I think if this thing evolved from that to that, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, evolutionary arms race. But if this thing just popped up out of nowhere, would this have caused the extinction of the dinosaurs? Well, yeah, most likely. These things, I mean, just look at the size of this thing. It would have to eat a lot of food. I presume it would have had to have eaten a lot of food. Now, if you're going based off of like it is in How to Train Your Dragon, yeah, what do they call them? The elder dragons? Oh man, they would have eaten so much. They would have needed so much. I mean, just to feed one of those things would have taken so much food. I don't, we've discussed it in the past. I don't know that a dragon that big would have been able to have even sustained itself with the amount of food it the amount of food it would have needed to have eaten. Um, I don't think dragons that big probably would have been able to fly, or at the very least, they would have needed much larger wings. Um, that being said, though, I think the wyvern's wings are probably right at about the same size, right at about the right size. I think this probably would have been able to have flown. Maybe its wings would have needed to be a little larger, but it's got some pretty big wings. I think it may have been able to have flown. Um, but let's now talk about now we've talked about nature, but would humanity? Now, if dragons just randomly popped up in, say, the medieval period, would humanity have been able to have survived the dragons? In How to Train Your Dragon, we see Vikings. They're really fighting these things, but there's a little bit of silliness to it. I love How to Train Your Dragon. Don't get me wrong, one of my favorite series. But if dragons were being real about the situation, I I don't know that humanity would have been able to handle that. This, of course, depends on how many there were. If they were fairly rare, yeah, sure, humanity would have been, humanity smart, humanity thonk. We would have figured out ways to have beat the dragons. But if like entire schools of dragons started attacking villages, like they do in the movie, I don't know. I don't know that humanity would have been able to have fought them off. I feel like dragons would have just, like I said, I don't know that in nature, if they were fighting other natural animals like, like bears and stuff, I don't know that they would have used fire then. Um, but against humans, I think the fire definitely would have been pretty devastating. It wouldn't have been good. It would not have been good for us. Of course, we do have things like ballista turrets and catapults, but I just don't know. I don't know that any of that stuff. We have arrows, and I'm gonna lag a little bit there. There. All right, guys. Sorry about that. My game decided to crash right at that moment, but it gave me a unique opportunity to see how much time I've been doing this, and I'm at 8 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this wrapped up because I have a tendency to go on rants, and I'm doing it right now, and it lasts longer than I expected to. So anyway, as I was saying, humanity did have arrows and ballista turrets and catapults, and I don't know, but given human ingenuity, we probably would have figured out a way to fight the dragons, and maybe even beat the dragons. You know, assuming they popped up around the medieval period, maybe we would have gone into looking into gunpowder weapons a little bit faster than we did in our time. Um, it's hard to say. It's also possible that perhaps an incursion of dragons may have even made humanity team up a little bit more than we inevitably did in real life here. Like I said, it's all really hard to say. Um, but I think in the end, wood dragons have really kind of ended the earth. You know, there's a movie I think about this where dragons basically popped up and they just absolutely scorched the entire planet and destroy everything, and then they all die. That's a that's a really stupid way to live. I don't know the dragons would definitely have not have lived that way. That's just not how nature works. So would I think if the dragons did actually exist, I think the Earth would have looked like a very different place. Um, how would it have looked? I think, like I said, I think we would have had more flying animals, more water animals, and probably more burrowing animals. I think there would have been a lot less animals just roaming around on the ground, because anything, either that or animals would have been way bigger. Because otherwise, anything is prey to something this size. Um, so that's pretty much it. That's my opinion on how the Earth would be if dragons had actually existed. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, consider hitting the like button, and then maybe even the subscribe button. It'll let you know the next time that I make a video like this. And let me know down in the comments below, how do you think the Earth would look if if dragons had actually existed? And with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in another time and dimension, whenever or wherever that may be. Till then, peace out.